Hello, and welcome to our series of Lent readings for 2023, considering people who encountered Jesus. Today it's day 8, and we've been looking at fishermen who were called by Jesus and became disciples. And we're going to look at the last of those today, and that's John. Just as we said yesterday that there was more than one James in the New Testament, so there is more than one John. In fact, there's at least 5 Johns. We've already met John the Baptist. Then in John's Gospel at the beginning, it says that Simon is called Simon, son of John. So John was Simon's father. In Acts 4:6, it says one of the leaders of the Sanhedrin, the Jewish ruling council, was called John. In Acts 12:12, it says that Mark, who accompanied Paul at the start of his first missionary journey, was also called John. And then there's John the disciple, John the son of Zebedee, John the brother of James, and that's who we're going to focus on today. We said yesterday that James had the shortest ministry of any of the disciples, a little over 10 years before he was martyred. In contrast, his brother John had the longest. At the end of the 1st century, John is exiled for his faith as an elderly man on the island of Patmos, where tradition has it that he died, the only disciple not to be martyred. John has a number of New Testament books attributed to him. 1 Gospel, 3 letters, and the book of Revelation. In John's Gospel, it mentions someone who is called alternatively the disciple whom Jesus loved, or the other disciple. This is usually seen as being John, who did not want to mention himself by name, though he still wants to point out in chapter 20 that he outran Peter to the tomb on that first Easter Sunday. I want to read words that John writes at the beginning of his Gospel, words that will be familiar to many of us. He writes, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it." Then jump into verse 9. "The true light that gives light to everybody has come into the world. He was in the world, and though the world was made through him, the world did not recognize him. He came to that which was his own, but his own did not receive him. Yet to all who did receive him, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God. Children born not of natural descent, nor of human decision or a husband's will, but born of God. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth." John's writings contain some of the deepest and most important passages in the New Testament. Consider John 3:16, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have everlasting life." John 14:6, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." His first letter, 1 John 1 verse 9, "If we confess our sins, he is faithful and just and will forgive us our sins and cleanse us from all unrighteousness." Later in 1 John 4, "God is love." And that's without mentioning the book of Revelation. You might wonder how a fisherman could have produced such writings. Well, the Pharisees were equally amazed. Consider what it says in Acts 4 when Peter and John were standing before the Sanhedrin on trial. Acts 4:13 says, "When they saw the courage of Peter and John and realized that they were unschooled, ordinary men, they were astonished. And they took note that these men had been with Jesus. They were fishermen. They were unschooled. But as the members of the Sanhedrin recognized, they had been with Jesus, probably the best 3 years education anyone could get. John had heard the crowds being taught. He heard the parables. He saw the miracles. He was one of the inner three who were especially close to Jesus and were getting a closer experience of times like the Transfiguration and Gethsemane. The more time we spend with Jesus, the more he can do in us and through us. You may feel that you don't know very much about the Bible, that there's much you don't understand about God and his ways. Then spend time with him. Time in prayer, time in reading, time in discussing, time in reflecting on what he has taught you. The further you walk with Jesus, the more you will grow in understanding. There may have been good reason why John outlived the other disciples and wrote towards the end of his life. It needed that many years of walking with Jesus to make him ready. Until next time, have a blessed day.